My sheep hear my voice. I know them, and they follow me. So what voice do we listen to? Or voices do we listen to in our lives? Do we hear his voice and follow him? Or do we listen to other voices? Does the teaching of Christ, his words, his works, what he did and what he's doing, make any difference in our lives? One cardinal bishop said, "We Christians should live our lives in such a way that our lives would not make any sense if God did not exist." To live in such a way that our lives would not make sense if God did not exist. In other words, that these teachings of Christ, this voice of Christ, his word, and the teachings he gives us through the church should make a difference in our lives. Sure, you had to get up this morning and come here, so that makes a bit of a difference in your life. But what we do here, does it affect how you live out in the world? Because many times our temptation as Christians, all of us, myself included, is to live very much in accord with the wisdom of the world with simply a sort of Christian veneer, rather than allowing the teachings of Christ, the scriptures of his word, the teachings he gives us through the church, to transform us all the way in the depths of who we are, to affect every aspect of how we live. Here's the thing, graduates and everyone here, you have great potential. But in recognizing that you have great potential, with that comes the recognition of the great potential, not only for good, but that you have great potential for tremendous harm, evil. That, especially the more successful one is, the more one gets positions of authority and leadership, the more greater that potential is to do tremendous evil and harm to others with the way we live. In the words of Uncle Ben, the Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. And there are many voices that often tell us various things of the world. They try telling us things like, there is no good and evil. You know, it's all relative, or good is and evil is whatever you want it to be, whatever you prefer, whatever you make it. Or it's that go ahead and it doesn't matter if you use and objectify others for your own success, as long as you succeed. Because what harm is there in that? Or voices that say it doesn't matter how you use and abuse others. Or it doesn't matter what you do with your body doesn't matter, or what you do to the body of others doesn't matter. Because it's what you make of it, what you want. Truth is whatever you want it to be. But what voices are we listening to and following? Those voices, or the voice of Christ, the shepherd? See, we have to recognize that the line between tremendous and incredible good and horrendous evil runs right down the center of the human heart. The line between horrendous evil and tremendous good rides right down the center of the human heart. And see, what determines which side of that line our heart turns towards is what voices we are listening to. To recognize that we need to ground ourselves into the voice of Christ. To ground ourselves in goodness and truth and beauty. To listen to his voice. Because that makes a difference between our potential for great good or potential for great evil. And Graduates, just because you're graduating, doesn't mean you've learned everything yet. But that goes for everyone here too. There's this idea in the Christian life sometimes, we have this notion that, well, once I finish religious ed and confirmed, I'm graduated, I'm done learning. That's all there is to learn about Christianity. Well, after going through 6 years of seminary, I learned there's a whole heck of a lot more to learn about this Christianity thing. And only to realize that I'm far from done learning and being formed myself. And so it's for us as disciples of Christ to continue to tune in to the voice of Christ, to be formed, to tune in, to listen to that voice, to immerse ourselves in prayer and His Word, to continue to study and learn about our faith in the church and what it teaches. Because as you go out there in the world, there will be many voices that tell you various things. And so it's becoming more and more grounded as what is the depths of the wisdom that our faith teaches. Because there are deep questions and there's also deep answers. And that somehow in this person of Jesus Christ and this good shepherd and His voice lies the answer to the deepest questions of the human heart. And that, I promise you, if you strive to follow God with everything that you are and follow Jesus Christ and His teaching and everything that you are and everything you do in life, I promise you it will be the greatest adventure of your life. Because following Jesus didn't die on the cross so that we could be bored, as I often like to say. Jesus didn't die on the cross so we could come be bored in church. Jesus came that you might have life and have it to the fullest. That's what this is about. And following God with everything you are, you will find the fullness of life. So it's about following His voice, so that your heart can continue to be formed and transformed to be a tremendous force of good in the world. To transform the world. To realize that this world is in a messed up state. And to realize that, to recognize the sin and evil in our own hearts, that in a way, we all have some stake in the state of the world. But it's also to rise up then and take responsibility. Many people in the world like to talk about rights, but then we don't like to talk so much about the responsibility that comes with those. So it's to rise up and take the responsibility to do something about the state of the world. To be a force of good in the world. And it starts with grounding us in this voice so that we can go and be a force of good to make this world better. To be the church in the world that we're called to be. As it says in our first reading today, to be a light to the nations is what we're called to be as a church. A light to the peoples and to bring salvation to the world. As the Catholic writer G.K. Chesterton once said, I don't want to belong to a church that's simply moved by the world. I want to belong to the church that moves the world.